So it is May 6, 2018. I just finished working on the 10th mosaic drawing of the Under the Wing series. This is the photograph taken in Kielce, Poland, that I did the photo from in January 1st, 1942. When I first saw the photograph, I practically gasped. Like the scarf looks to be like made out of like rough twine.
It looks like roving to me.
Like what?
Roving. It's not been spun finely, yarn. That's what I think. What is it actually?
I don't know.
Oh, that's what that looks like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't think it looks like twine then?
Well, it could. But that, right away it makes me think of that, I don't know, was this a landlocked town?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Otherwise, I would
Southwest
have said
Poland.
maybe fishing net kind of thing. But that's what not really fine yarn looks like when you're spinning it, though, too. So,
so this is Doña-Maria, who I just met. She's the sister of a neighbor of mine.
Christopher.
And so this is a drawing in the center. I did inspired by that photo. And then a mosaic around it. It's called and I did this design for like tolerance education for young children. It's called The Sea Monsters and the Child with the Bird's Nest Scarf in the Kielce Ghetto, Nazi-occupied Poland, 1942. So your family background is Catholic, right?
Yeah.
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 I'm curious to hear.
It does have a nice Madonna sort of presentation to it. Okay.
So I just added a few things the last few weeks since I did a program on April 11th. I added this thing up here. I added this like rope from fishing boats I picked up on the beach in La Push out on the coast some years ago, and I added this cup, which I bought at a shop like in Jaffa near Tel Aviv on one of my teaching trips to Israel. And I added this, whatever you call this,
candlestick?
Like candlestick holder. And I kind of secured it in there with this plate, which gave it to me a certain Christian iconographic look. So I'm curious to hear responses to it from Christians, Catholics, Protestants, whoever else wants to see it.
I should maybe first of all tell you that I identify a little bit more with my pagan self than I do my Catholic self. Although, I am interested in icons and madonnas. We grew up with madonnas all over the house.
Really?
Our mother collected them. And so one of the first things I think of is that this reminds me of a lot of Greek Orthodox icons and
interesting.
And the way a Madonna is often presented. Okay. Not holding a babe, but holding a cup of breakfast.
Holding a what?
A cup of breakfast.
Right.
Maybe, looks like it might be rice or some sort of
when I looked
grain.
When I looked at the Holocaust Museum's website a few months ago when I was working on the drawing, I saw two other photographs that had the child in there, aside from this one, which they also had, and it said that this was bread, which I had speculated for years was either kind of like a brick of bread or some kind of book or something. So
I don't know. Looks like a good, healthy slice of Jewish rye bread to me.
Oh, that's great. That's great. This is a drawing, a detail of a very large drawing I did some years ago with from the same photograph.
But this is really interesting to me, whatever it is, okay?
Yeah.
So when you first look at this, I think a lot of people are going to think worms.
Worms?
Worms,
really?
Yes. It looks like worms.
Do you get that feeling looking at it here?
Well, maybe even more so.
Really?
In some ways, because of the color. But worms I'm going to say worms first,
sure.
Right? Or
I guess, I can see that, especially if I squint my eyes.
Well, I think it's more in the curvature of the line, and that's wormish. But what's interesting to me is that would be positioned right below a mouth that you cannot see. And so I start thinking that you can't see/hear the words of that individual. Now, is it bound by worms, serpents, that kind of thing? Does it take that many of them to keep her from speaking?
Or him.
Even though it looks like The individual is trying to smile.
That's what's interesting to me.
Because the eyes are
You
smiling.
can see like a hint of a Mona Lisa smile
Well,
there.
but the eyes are really smiling.
Yeah. Considering the
smiling.
circumstances,
Yeah.
I have seen other photographs of people in the ghettos, even in the concentration camps, smiling when they're being
Yeah.
photographed, which always astonishes me. I guess it was a natural reaction. You're supposed to smile, but considering the circumstances of where they were, it's always
I think it also is an
amazing.
indication of them being able to say that I can smile through this. We are not being diminished by this.
Actually, I've heard something similar said. I heard something similar said by a late survivor I know who lived in Issaquah, and I heard him speak a couple of times over the years. He was one of the handful of people who survived and escaped a death camp where he was like a child slave laborer called Sobibor. And when he spoke about the Orthodox, devout, resisting by praying, I was astonished because I had never heard that as a concept of resistance till he mentioned it, which still kind of amazes me that they were in their, they were sort of in their kind of an internal peace with God and themselves, even though they knew they were going to be
When an
murdered,
awful lot
so.
of the mundane generic knowledge is that they were passive victims, and that's not the case, as we are finding out more and more all the time. So so anyway, I mean, it doesn't give me any sense of foreboding or anything else like that. It just says anything that can be said is extremely complex.
That's good.
And that's what I see out
Good
of that.
response.
Yeah.
In terms of this, every time I look down at this, when it's
Well, let's alter it. It looks like an altar.
maybe because of
Because we can't-
the horizontal here and the
correct.
twisting there, I keep on thinking that people are going to see this as like a crucifix image or a
Well,
cross
it
image.
also looks like it's a bit of a caduceus, though, too.
Like a what?
Caduceus, that's the medical thing, the cross with the serpent going around it.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is about healing. So choose your symbology. That's what I would have said. I think, the strap holding the candlestick on it. Well, you're not going to take that one out of the church. That one will be there.
Actually, it's interesting to me that you mentioned that because I've a retired American Baptist minister who I first met at the Jewish Student Center at the UW campus in 1992. We'd both gone to see Art Spiegelman, the author of the Mouse books in the U.S.
Yeah.
And, Spiegelman didn't show up, and I began chatting with this guy, and he's seen a lot of my work over the years, and even co-led discussion at presentations I gave at a few places. And I showed him a few years ago, and I invited him over to see one of the other previous mosaic drawing combos, to which I had added, I had made a shelf on the bottom like this, and then I added tiles to it. And he looked at it and he said, it was a decidedly Christian term that I was unfamiliar with. He said, I think it was reliquary or something like that. And I thought, wow, we don't have this in Jewish visual art terms. And anyway, it just kind of momentarily surprised me to hear that interpretation when it was outside of my
I used to
own
construct
experience.
reliquaries. It was one of my
really?
art objects, reliquaries, and this, I was going to say, this sort of reminds me of a rarido, which is...
What's the word?
Rarido.
Rarido.
It might be raridos. Rarido. I don't know exactly. I don't know if it's Latin. I think it is. Okay. It's the structure behind an altar, often ornate, sometimes with figures, but it's supposed to have symbology and things like that have to do with the divine, blah, 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 things like that. But yeah, rarido, because I did a piece based on that too. And then it looks like
You did an artwork yourself.
Yeah, yeah. You're just touching on themes I've worked with, so that's why. And I did a whole series of these little icon kind of things too for a while. But the other thing that it reminds me of are some of the pictures, and I can't remember what they're called, that they put in putting the nichos in old Hispanic houses in the Santa Fe area. They're usually pictures of some saint or something
Like
to
a
revere.
Hispanic Catholic tradition.
Yeah. So that's what it makes me think of. But, and I like that you can pretty much go to any bit or piece in there, and you can go off on a story. So.
Questions, sure.
Yeah, so 6. I see 3 just really quickly. 6-pronged star, Star of David. Oh, 6, 7, 8. Okay.
In the drawing?
Yeah. And you made none of them yellow. Not that I think you should.
There's one with a bird there, this one here, another one there, which kind of looks like a starfish or something. There's one there. Actually, several of these were from pieces of a linoleum block print that I had pieces of from a proof that I had saved that wasn't intact anymore. And I glued them down and then added more drawing. I see one
2 more
black and white one down there. That would be a borscht-built gefilte fish.
Oh, yeah.
This might be like a southeast Florida with a lot of Jewish retirees, like alligator on.
So how does the horse fit in then?
Oh, just thinking about children and kids like horses and stuff.
Bluebird happies.
These 2 birds, maybe more. Here's the big one down here, another goofy fish here. A bird in there, I think I pointed out. There's another bird there.
Fun.
So,
moving from one, for me this would work, and so I assume everybody works that way, right? I start doing something over here and then going, oh, and then that would go here and then do that. Oh, but then the cool thing that had one of these over there. Oh, and then you don't have that much space left.
Yeah, the drawing was like a whole separate project in a way, which I did first, because then I found a piece of wood I had at home that was big enough for it, and then it's like a multi-part process in making, building the outside frame first, saving enough room, having enough border on the drawing after I cut the drawing into a shape, because it had been rectangular paper. So I'd have wood to seal in the plexiglass that would go over once all the mosaic was done. And then there was all the mosaic. Anyway, it actually was fairly quick. I usually some of these things have taken me like up to 2 years when I was still working a job. But I began this, I think, in mid-March, and it was done within 2 months. So so that
I've always
was very
wanted
quick
to try doing a mosaic. I always had this idea that maybe if the garden walls are concrete, cinder block, I'll do a mosaic. I'll just go out and break the dishes and do mosaics.
Well,
that hasn't happened yet. So.
Well, I should mention then that the tiles I make mainly from plates that I buy like at Goodwill.
Yeah. Is it meditative, assembling them?
It's,
in a way?
doing the drawing is more meditative if I'm working on a section. The mosaic tile making is really a labor of love.
Yeah.
Getting all these pieces to fit, and then there's the grouting and the grout cleaning and just a whole lot.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much. I think
Sure. Pleasure talking to you.
13 and a half minutes here, so that's fairly long. What's that?
What? Is that your name? Did I get that? Akiva.
And
Dona. There's a Kiva. There's a Kiva. There's another Kiva. I'm familiar with Kivas.
Kivas. Kiva, K-I-V-A, is actually a diminutive nickname form of Akiva.
Oh, is it?
Which is also sometimes spelled with a B, like Akiba.
Oh, and it's a ceremonial place in the Pueblos in South
Is it really?
New Mexico. Oh, yes.
A-K-I-V-A?
No, Kiva, just Kiva.
Oh, Kiva.
Kiva
K-I-V-A.
is a Dene word. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's good to
so
know.
I know Kivas.
I might have to go visit there sometime.
Chaco Canyon, I strongly suggest it. Bring lots of water and a bicycle.
And
good walking shoes.
Thanks.